Dawson Rider with you.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here, and it's time for the episode 2 review for Power Rangers Beast Morphers. I believe this is called Evox's Revenge, and I thought it was another pretty strong episode. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, we actually open up, they actually do a previously on thing, which I don't remember them doing very often, and there's no, like, weird narration, you know, like, oh, the world's greatest ninja or anything. I mean, maybe they'll have it next week, but I kind of doubt it. It just doesn't seem like they're going to do it anymore. Not that I wanted it. But anyway, I actually completely forgot that until I was just going over that. Anyway, so, we actually open up with Blaze and Roxy going to where Evox is. They get transported there when they, transported them last week. Pretty convenient that they ended up where Evox was, but maybe it makes sense just because their, I don't know, DNA or their, avatar NA is locked into it. But it's a place called the Cyber Dimension, and they meet a guy called Scrotums? I don't know, but like he's just kind of like a robot guy, and he's like, I rule this dimension. Wait, that's Guilmon. But you know what I mean. He was like, pretending he ruled the dimension, but it turns out he's just under Evox's boot. And they already say it's called the Cyber Dimension. It's called the Cyber Dimension. What's interesting about it is, we've seen a couple shots in the trailers, but it looks like a ruined apocalypse world. I'll be interested to see what's done with that. I'll talk about that a bit in a minute. But yeah, basically, he lives there, but Evox rules over him. He makes the Tronics, which are the henchmen, and he helps make the robots by using Morph X energy, but he also talks about how he made the Tronics to guard him from other, like, robot enemies there. So I think it's interesting that potentially we could get, monsters of the week that are both either created by this guy, slash Evox, or that might just be native to this cyber dimension that are either related or not related to Evox. I think that's kind of interesting. But then we catch up with our Rangers coming out of the battle simulator. Devin's super stoked to have been in it because he sees it as a video game, as we saw, since that's what he was trying to do in the first episode. They're trying to decide who's leader. Ravi and Roxy are all about it. Devin's just thinking about that game in his head. Can't wait to get back and play some Red Dead Redemption 2 in the simulator. Then we meet our Beast Bots, which were the Buddy Roids. I quite like them so far. I think it's too early to form full-formed opinions. I think my favorite's Jax, though, just based off of the voice. But I think they all have pretty solid potential, and, I hope that they do some good things with them. But we get to meet them, they get to take a look at their Zords, and just in time, because there's an attack, where Blaze and this Skrillex guy are off trying to get Morph X energy, and he made them keys out of the wreckage. That's interesting that he said that. I'll get back to that later, but, they're getting Morph X because if they get enough of it, they can bring Evox back to this world. That's also interesting. Again, I don't feel like I want to read too much into anything, but the fact that they said back makes me think Evox is originally from this dimension. But yeah, they gotta stop them. We get a nice civilian fight, which is cool. And then we get them morphed, which we see the morph from the preview, and in case you didn't watch that video, shame on you and get out. No, I'm just kidding. But I like the morph. We don't have, at least at the moment, a full-on, like, cutaway morphing sequence, but I do dig the little tornado with the animal bead. It makes it different, but they still use, like, the Go Busters glasses, and it kind of goes around like a boomerang. I like that. And then we get a nice fight scene with them. We get to show off their powers again. I think it was pretty much original footage, I believe, and it was really, I think the choreography was pretty on point in this episode again. There was some really cool stuff. And then they start to develop their weaknesses. Now in Go Busters, they also had weaknesses. The first one that is displayed is Devin's when he sees a dog, as opposed to a chicken, which was Hiromo's in Go Busters. And then, Ravi and Zoe, I might already called them that before, but they are too busy competing, about being leader, and then their weaknesses play into that because Ravi starts overheating and he gets super aggressive and starts attacking Zoe, and she's getting tired because that's her weakness. So because they were so busy fighting each other, basically, which led to their weaknesses flaring up, no one was there to save Devin. But luckily, Ben and Betty were there they kind of drove them. They're like, fish you SUV guys. No, but they got in the way and helped Devin. And then they couldn't figure out what was wrong with them, why that was happening with the weaknesses. And Ravi and Zoe were still kind of out of it when Skrillex, it's like Scrod, I'm just gonna call him Skrillex till I remember it. I feel like I even said it at the beginning of the episode, or the beginning of this episode, my episode. Anyway. Basically, like, they're still being checked out by Nate. They can't figure out what's going on, but Devin recovers, so Skrillex makes a Megazord, or a giant robot. He calls it like a Gigaroid, and he's like, I have thousands of them, or hundreds of them, and there's like a big, like, Tony Stark Hall of Iron Man armors, like, thing that he pops it out of, and so that attacks, and Devin gets to go out with his Zord first, which is super cool. You made your debut, buddy! But he's like, it's not real, it's not the true me, CB01. He's a Sentai purist, just, it's fine. But, you know, I don't know why he has the Toku fan voice. But yeah, so we get to see a little bit of that. I think that with all the Zords, there was a little bit of original, like, CG footage, but, you know, I love that mecha, and Go Busters had some really unique fight footage in terms of not always just going straight to the full Megazord, and sometimes you'd have, like, mecha fights and guys on the ground, and I'm not like, you have to keep things from Go Busters or it's ruined, but that's something I hope that they keep or even expand on, because you know, Megazord fights can get so formulaic. Like, it's just basically like clocking in. Like, okay, we're gonna fight, boom, boom, boom. Oh, they hit us back, but wait, finisher. I mean, that's kind of what this was like. But, you know, the uniqueness of the Go Busters fight footage really shook things up, and I think that's something to keep, especially since they're keeping the weaknesses. But anyway, Devin happens to see a dog food banner, so he freezes again. And then after that, Nate figures out that the reason they have the weaknesses is because when they became Rangers, they briefly made contact with the Evox virus. Which is an interesting note, because there was lots of theories about that already after episode 1, that maybe Ravi had some in him and they could use it for a story later, possibly involving, you know, Ryuji's overheating, or even something else. But then people also brought up, like, well, wouldn't there have been a virus still somehow in Red and Yellow's tubes? But so that ended up all being true, but, like, right away. So instead of Ravi being taken over as evil, I mean, he kind of went, not evil, but, you know, he had the most evil reaction. But I think that was not only an interesting way of incorporating the weaknesses, which they probably wanted to do for footage, I guess, but making it about Evox, and it makes sense too that, you know, there was still some residual Evox energy in Red and Yellow's tubes when the new Rangers got them. I still think it's completely possible that later on they could have Ravi have an arc where Evox tries to make it of an avatar, like maybe Evox got some sort of connection to Ravi or something because he almost bonded with him. I'm still not going to rule that out as a potential storyline, but I like the way that they did that. And then Nate basically tells them, you know, how to assuage their weaknesses. Like, he's like, okay, Ravi, just, like, take it easy, man, because you're going to go out like a gorilla, or Hulk out like a gorilla, and you'll become tired like a rabbit. Here's a carrot. Wow, that's racist. You think she's a rabbit. And then Devin's is because he's a cheetah and cats are scared of dogs. That feels like a stretch. I feel like a cheetah could totally take a dog, but it's fine. I kind of like that they tied it to the animals, and Go Busters was more tied to the emotional stuff, but I dig mostly the way they did it. But since Devin's frozen, the other Rangers have to come to the rescue, and we get to see their Zords. They help, and then when the Mechazord gets knocked off course, it knocks Devin out of the sightline of the dog, and he uses the Cheetah Blaster thing, which he actually saw when they were looking at the Zords. He uses the Squidward mode, boom, monster done. Back at the base, you know, I think actually Devin said this earlier to them, but he was basically talking to Ravi and Zoe about, like, you know, you guys are too busy fighting over who's leader and you totally messed up, and thanks to Ben and Betty, I was saved. And then when they all go back to the base, it's actually Ravi and Zoe that suggests that Devin be their leader based on how he performed in this episode. I honestly thought it was going to be the commander because, like, you know, you saw her watching everything Devin was doing and watching how Ravi and I keep wanting to call him Ravi and Roxy, that just rolls off the tongue so well. Ravi and Zoe were making fools of themselves. Who knows, maybe she was going to say that. But I do like the way that they presented us to the audience why Devin should be leader, because he was so unconcerned with that, and he was just kind of very fluid in, you know, what he was doing. He wasn't thinking, I don't want to say he wasn't thinking about it, because obviously he was taking it seriously, but he was just letting it come naturally, prioritizing while also, you know, not overthinking it, and I liked it. I really like Devin quite a lot, actually. I like his personality. I think he's got, like, a good, like, courageous leadership streak, but he also has that kind of fun-loving bit with, you know, loving video games and stuff. Honestly, I still like all the Rangers, which is really neat. But they decide on a leader, and I really like that Devin then thanked Ben and Betty, and they all do, like, a group hug. And they do, like, a callback to earlier in the episode when they were showing the Beast Bots off. They're showing them, like, this electric thing, and Ben and Betty electrocute themselves, like classic physical comedy Saban brands mess around. But then they have a callback to it where they're doing the group hug and they all get zapped because Ben still had it in his pocket. But yeah, I really liked this episode. I thought it was a very solid second outing. Like I said, I liked the way that they chose the leader. I liked the way that they explained the weaknesses with Evox. I think they introduced some very interesting stuff about him. Like I said, they said bring back, so I think it's totally possible he's from this dimension. I think the Skrillex guy is interesting. It's an original villain suit creation too. But because he says like I rule over this dimension, then Evox shows up and he's like, I think it is totally possible he might have ruled over that dimension. And then when Evox came, he became the alpha. So, but I could totally see that playing in. I mean, I could be reading too much into it, but there's lots of stories like that where you'll find out like the henchmen used to be like the leader and then they were overthrown and they always are like resenting and they kind of are plotting in the back of their mind a rebellion. So that could be interesting. There's just stuff noting there. I also thought it was interesting that he mentioned other people in that dimension. And the fact that the dimension looks like a ruined Earth, even though it's called the cyber dimension. Or it could be some sort of like avatar of the whole world. Like, you know, since we saw that they created human avatars for Blaze and Roxy, what if that's like somehow an avatar of one of the Earths? Because they also mentioned that I created these keys out of the wreckage. That could have just meant he got some tech to create them, but what if they were keys from Beast Morphers Rangers from another dimension? Again, I might be reading too much into it, but they could do some of this, they could do none of this, but I think it opened up some interesting things to think about, which I really like. I'm still not a fan of them having a blaster just to use in the Megazord, but you know, we're going to get other stuff that won't be. I don't know if it needed an explanation, but I kind of wanted an explanation of why that thing looks like Squidward. I also like how they do use the transport things from Go Busters, you know, as they kind of set up last episode. But yet, like, when Zoe and Ravi are fighting, Zoe still uses the Toku Pocket to just pull a blaster out of nowhere. But we get to see them using both the gadgets. We didn't get to see the camera function this week, but they did use the binoculars function, which was nice. I also wanted to highlight Ben and Betty because, honestly, I really do quite like them so far. Last week, I saw a lot of potential with them, but I really saw a lot of it this week, even more so. And it's interesting to note they are also not security guards this week. They were in laundry uniforms, but they were kind of helping the Rangers test stuff out. And the commander said that she kind of moves them around roles where they're useful or not useful or whatever she said. But they have a pretty solid mix of humor, at least in this episode. Like, you have the classic, like, oh my god, my hair is shocked. But they also had some funny moments, like when they're going to go into battle and Betty's like, we're going to go. And Ben's like, we are? I mean, yeah, we are. Or at the end when Devin thanks them and Ben's like, you don't have to mention it. Oh, Betty's like, no, mention it a lot. And so that's what I was talking about with like Victor and Monty and stuff, is you have to have a balance where you can have that like, oh no, a pie's in my face humor, but then have some other moments that are just kind of like genuine human humor. And I think they did that. And they already kind of showcased what I was talking about by in last week's review about how having them, you know, a part of Grid Battle Force makes them feel like a more natural part of the show, and they can actually have cool character moments of courage, and they already had that this week. So I think there's a lot of potential for them, and I find them quite charming. I don't want to like jump the gun on it, because who knows, they could turn into Victor and Monty 2.0 next week, but they're doing really well so far, and I'm happy with it. It seems like they've really reined in a lot of the stuff from last week. Not last week, from last season, sorry. But yeah, I really liked this episode. I thought it was a solid second one. It's also interesting that, like, not interesting, but, you know, like with Dino Charge and Ninja Steel, which both had solid-ish premieres, and then their second episodes definitely felt like, you know, they were meant to be an hour-long premiere. This definitely, like, confirmed that episode 1 felt very much just like a one premiere, and this was very clearly a second episode. Again, I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic because like Dino Charge and stuff had very solid early starts. This is still very early. I think the true test for me in a lot of ways is going to come in the next couple weeks when we get the more status quo episodes, because even though this was past the pilot, we're still very much doing setup of a lot of the stuff. So like once we get into our first filler episode or first regular episode, but so far I'm really into it. I liked the episode a lot. I would give it an 8.5, I think, just like last week's. But anyway, let me know what you guys thought. I was thinking about maybe doing a theories video for this, maybe this week or next week. Let me know what you guys think too. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and of course, don't forget to climb the steps and ring that bell to get the notifications for all my videos for Power Rangers news and toy reviews. Dawson Ryder, signing out.